Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. An Israeli airstrike kills a mayor and 5 state officials in southwestern Lebanon. This as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu refuses to accept a ceasefire in Lebanon proposed by the United States and France. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky presents his victory plan to the country's parliament. President Zelensky rules out ceding Ukrainian territory to Russia and slams China and North Korea for supporting Moscow. The United States, South Korea and Japan launch a new multilateral team to monitor sanctions on Russia and North Korea. The panel includes several other members, including Britain, France, Germany and Canada. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman meets his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo. The two leaders agree to boost trade and investments while promising to collaborate on boosting tourism. And a fuel tanker explosion kills at least 94 and wounds over 50 in northern Nigeria. Police say many victims were trying to collect fuel, which had spilled onto the road after a tanker crashed and overturned. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. Now, we have been telling you about the ongoing Russia-US rivalry in Africa. This rivalry is about increasing influence in the continent. In recent times, Russia has been able to gain some edge. It has made significant inroads in the continent. Now, Russia has challenged Western presence through different covert and overt strategies. While Moscow is diminishing Western military presence in Africa, it is parallelly running other campaigns that are targeting Western diplomatic, economic and cultural influence. And public health care is now on Russian President Vladimir Putin's list. As per reports, US-funded anti-malaria programs are Russia's latest target in Africa. Malaria is one of the gravest health problems in Africa. For years, it has been the leading cause of deaths and illnesses in the continent. US-funded programs are helping scientists to solve the malaria problem. But pro-Russian activists and influencers have been trying to convince people that these scientists are not in Africa to end the malaria crisis, but rather to further increase it. Now, one effort to fight malaria in Africa is called the Target Malaria. It is a non-profit backed by Western institutions. They operate in countries like Burkina Faso, Ghana and Uganda. In Burkina Faso, the group is working to create a species of mosquito that will not transmit malaria. But pro-Russian activists have reportedly said the group is behind the rising cases of the deadly disease. Though their claims are not backed by any scientific evidence, but nevertheless, the word has spread that the Western scientists are conspirators. But this is not an isolated incident. Russian propaganda on healthcare is part of its wider disinformation campaign in Africa. As per the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, Russia continues to be the primary purveyor of disinformation in Africa, sponsoring 80 documented campaigns and targeting more than 22 countries. The organization blames that such disinformation campaigns have a destabilizing and anti-democratic consequences. Now, these campaigns have reached millions of users. So how is Russia running its ideological warfare in Africa? Social media plays a huge role. Africa is home to an estimated 600 million internet users, including 400 million who are active on social media. So that's an easy and influential audience for Russia. Russia reportedly hires African journalists, bloggers, and members of local public to amplify its message and image. And recently, it also launched a news outlet called the African Initiative, which has been successful in promoting Russian culture in the continent. Russia's state-owned Media RT channel has also expanded its network in Africa. It has started various ventures with African media that spread pro-Russian and anti-Western propaganda. The efforts have been particularly focused on the 3 military-run countries of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. These military-run neighbors have turned their backs on Western partners and have forged closer ties with Russia. The growing Russian influence is visible in the Sahel countries. Videos have shown teenage footballers listening to the Russian national anthem before a match in Burkina Faso. Russian President Vladimir Putin's portrait has become far too common a sight in Western Africa. And now that healthcare has also reportedly become a part of Russia's disinformation campaign, how will it impact the continent, which is reeling from multiple health-related disasters? The United States has tried to warn people about this campaign, but will it be successful? Or will Russia manage to gain an edge in Africa? To discuss this further, we have with us Patrick Bond, Distinguished Professor at the University of Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, good to be with you and the viewers, Alyson. Thanks.
Now, how does Russia's interference with the US-funded anti-malaria programs affect the broader geopolitical competition between Russia and the US on the African continent?
Well, it is very important. The weaponization of public health has been noted. You would sort of say conspiracy theories around health became notorious during the COVID period when there were all sorts of questions as to how this disease was spreading and whether the vaccines and other treatments were effective, and how especially the West had locked up through intellectual property, although Russia also, with its Sputnik, with its vaccine, also had an interest in, let's say, intellectual property. Russia did join India, along with South Africa, Kenya, in fighting against the intellectual property, that is to call for a waiver, but not very hard. And the US also withdrew its sort of, let's say, dogmatic intellectual property on that. And so we've seen public health become a site for, let's say, struggle over millions of lives. In South Africa alone, we had 300,000 deaths due to COVID, and many, many could have been prevented had it not been for Boris Johnson in the UK and Angela Merkel in Germany sticking to intellectual property restrictions, which meant we couldn't get generic vaccines and treatment. So you can see public health. We would even take it back to AIDS, where the US had opposed getting AIDS medicines off of intellectual property in the World Trade Organization, with Africa having about 40 million people living with HIV. That meant the life expectancy went way down. And it was the struggle to get rid of some of the, let me say, corporate power over healthcare. And that's why it's so, I say, refreshing that the US did come around, and it has a very good program for AIDS medicines called PEPFAR, and the anti-malaria work. Bill and Melinda Gates supporting it. They have a very mixed record in the health field, but it is one of those sites, regrettably, after the Russians lost Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group, in that plane crash 14 months ago, and then reassembled the Africa Corps, and really is digging in and making sure that at least in some of the countries that are loyal to Putin, that they are going to have what appears to me misinformation about US malaria, anti-malaria support.
And what are the potential short and long-term public health impacts on malaria prevention efforts in African countries where these programs are disrupted?
Yeah, if they're really being disrupted by ill-informed, malevolent influencers, which happens all the time, the Russians are just as notorious as many in the United States who also play on social media with misinformation. So these are, two countries. In fact, even the Africa Center for Strategic Studies is located in the Pentagon. We would never really know whether the Pentagon or the New York Times, which broke this story, are really telling the truth. They have, mixed records. So I would say that if you take malaria as a major problem, 600,000 deaths a year. And what the studies have shown since the year 2000 is that it's getting worse in some areas where there's higher humidity, higher rainfall, therefore more puddles and places for the mosquitoes to breed. And it's in that sense that I think a bigger problem, which is indeed the climate catastrophe, which is causing this humidity and causing extreme weather. And there, the US is number 2 emitter of greenhouse gases, Russia number 4. And I think these are where, let me call it, a climate debt is owed by, especially the United States, the number 1 historic emitter. So I hope they don't stop funding malaria because of this sort of misinformation. It's one of the things that I think Washington owes to the continent of Africa to try to help eradicate this awful disease of malaria.
And Professor, how are the African governments and regional bodies responding to Russia's actions? And what measures are being taken to ensure that critical health programs are protected?
Well, the African Union is the crucial body because it does have a strong public health component. And indeed, the head of the World Health Organization is from Ethiopia. So there's a lot of concern that the AU get more priority, and it is joining as of last September in the Delhi meeting of the G20. It will be meeting the AU as a body as part of the G20 now in Rio, and then South Africa hosts the G20 next year. And that's usually a place where the sorts of pledges can be made from the West and the BRICS countries to working together, let me call them imperial and sub-imperial alliance. They do recognize in those settings that they have to give African Union officials much more attention than in the past. And likewise, 2 new African states will probably join the United Nations Security Council, although without veto powers. That is something the US doesn't want to see, let's say, diluted, and neither does Russia nor China. Now, those are the kind of questions of the institutional power of representatives from the continent. Can they speak out and not be trampled by these 2 big elephants, the US and Russia, as both try to make both geopolitical and also, let's not underestimate, raw material extraction agendas with the new economies requiring some of the cobalt. Those are the sorts of things we'll continue to watch, and the battleground now includes public health. It's a shame.
Professor, thank you very much for being with us on the show. As always, great to have you, and thanks for your valued insights.
Thank you.
Shifting focus to the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African nation is reeling from years-long conflict between army and the M23 rebel group. While efforts are ongoing to secure peace, Congolese youth have categorically rejected any negotiations with the M23 rebels. Hundreds of protesters gathered in the streets of the DRC's eastern city of Butembo on Monday. They expressed their support for the country's army and their anger against the rebels.
Today, we have come to show our love and support for our army, the FARDC, which is the only army we have. The people of Butembo, having endured long years of suffering, with the war imposed by the Rwandans through the M23, as well as the massacres committed by ADF, Allied Democratic Forces, want to make it clear that we are not ready to give up. We stand behind our army to support and encourage it to go and drive these criminals out of the forest where they are hiding.
The young protesters called for stronger military action against rebel groups occupying eastern regions of the country and opposed any peace talks with the M23 rebels.
Today, we called for a large demonstration to show that we have had enough of the massacres, to show that we have had enough of the security issues. That is why we called for great solidarity, for strong mobilization to try to educate the population, the entire community, and all the local communities in Eastern DRC, to tell them that if we are currently suffering, it is partly because we are also responsible for our suffering, as we do not support our army.
These protests come as the DRC and Rwanda are continuing negotiations in Angolan capital Luanda to try to resolve the conflict in the region. Several rebel groups are operating in the Democratic Republic of Congo. However, the fighting between the army and the M23 rebels has been the most violent. The M23, or the March 23 rebels, is an armed group mainly made up of ethnic Tutsis that broke away from the Congolese army over a decade ago. The rebels say they are fighting to safeguard the interests of their ethnic groups in the country. For the past many years, the Congolese army and the M23 have been fighting for control of the eastern city of Goma and the surrounding area. A peace agreement was also signed in 2012. However, the rebels have broken the agreement and renewed fighting in recent years. Parts of eastern DRC have been plagued by violence. According to the United Nations, over 5 million people have been displaced in the DRC due to the intense fighting. The conflict has increased tensions in the region, with the alleged involvement of the neighboring Rwanda in the conflict. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo accuses Rwanda, whose president, Paul Kagame, is also an ethnic Tutsi, of providing support to the rebels. The United Nations also blames Kigali for funding, training and equipping the M23 rebels. However, Rwanda has repeatedly denied these allegations. Rwanda has instead said that it has been taking defensive measures and accuses the DRC of fighting alongside a Hutu rebel group that have attacked Tutsis in both countries. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo accuses Rwanda of creating obstacles in the peace talks. While efforts continue to mediate between the two neighbors and secure peace in the conflict-ridden DRC, it is the people of the DRC who have been facing the brunt of the violence, and many of them are now taking to the streets to voice their growing anger. As the world of technology and artificial intelligence continues to evolve and grow, the challenges to regulate them have also risen. One such digital innovation has been in the finance and investment sector. It's called cryptocurrency. The rise and its adoption has been so significant in recent years that countries across the globe have been scrambling to monitor them more efficiently. One such country is South Africa, which has asked cryptocurrency users to declare their assets. The South African Revenue Service, or SARS, which is the nation's tax collecting authority, has announced that it would include crypto assets in its tax compliance program. This comes after the authority noticed that taxpayers were not declaring their crypto assets and trades in their tax returns. SARS now wants to ensure that there is full disclosure of all digital asset holdings. But why is SARS wanting to monitor cryptocurrency? And what is cryptocurrency exactly? Let's understand. Cryptocurrency is a digital currency. It is traded between consenting parties on a digital ledger, meaning it allows people to make payments directly to each other. It uses cryptography to secure transactions. Now, cryptography is a method of protecting information and communications using codes and mathematical concepts. Now, these currencies generally operate without any central authority, such as a bank or a government. And this means, unlike the US dollar or the euro, there is no central authority that manages and maintains the value of cryptocurrency. Hence, cryptocurrencies are not considered traditional currencies. Now, there are more than 9,000 cryptocurrencies in the world. The most popular among them are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Moreover, there are different platforms on which they can be exchanged and traded, with the most well-known being Binance, Coinbase, and Kraken. So why does South Africa want to monitor crypto trade? Now, South Africa's Revenue Service is legally obligated to account for any income or asset that taxpayers hold. By including crypto under its ambit, SARS is aiming to enhance the detection and reporting of undeclared cryptocurrency holdings. The agency also wants to ensure that taxpayers adhere to South African tax laws. Currently, there are more than 5.8 million South Africans that hold crypto assets. The cryptocurrency market in South Africa is projected to achieve a revenue of $388.3 million in 2024. However, the decentralized and often opaque nature of crypto transactions has made it difficult for the tax agencies to monitor them, and SARS has a plan to enforce and regulate cryptocurrency assets. The agency is reaching out to the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, the FSCA, and crypto asset service providers to gather more information about traders and users. It has also asked taxpayers who have not previously disclosed their crypto assets to sign up for its voluntary disclosure program so that they can avoid facing penalties. SARS is also increasing the capabilities of its audit teams to support its enforcement initiatives. And it is also issuing query letters to taxpayers with crypto assets to gain more insights about their investments. While cryptocurrencies have offered new opportunities for wealth generation, they have also created loopholes that tax authorities are now finding out about. However, it is yet to be seen how South Africa will monitor and regulate taxpayers disclosing their cryptocurrency holdings. And finally, to our special segment, Resurgent Africa. Amid the coups and the crises, there are many positive stories from Africa that often get overlooked, but not on this show. In a game-changing move, Kenya's maternal health care is getting a much-needed boost, thanks to a portable ultrasound introduced by the United Nations Women's Health Agency. Now, these devices, now reaching women in some of Kenya's most remote areas, are helping detect pregnancy complications early, slashing the risks of maternal and infant deaths. The program also teaches midwives to operate the life-saving tech. This initiative is not just offering better health outcomes, it is also empowering women to take control of their pregnancies. Here are all the details.
In Kenya, 355 women die from pregnancy-related causes for every 100,000 live births. This is according to the UN's Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency. This staggering statistic translates to 5,000 women and girls losing their lives each year due to complications from pregnancy and childbirth. A simple ultrasound could prevent many of these deaths, yet this life-saving service is out of reach for many. Historically, women in Kenya have struggled to access essential maternal health care services like ultrasounds. But that's changing, thanks to a new portable ultrasound service that's transforming maternal care in the country. Launched by the United Nations Sexual and Reproductive Health Agency, these portable devices allow healthcare workers to detect pregnancy complications much earlier, proving to be a game changer for maternal health.
I was expecting twins during my third pregnancy. However, when I delivered at home, only one of the babies survived. Tragically, the other passed away. Looking back, I realized that if I had gone for an ultrasound scan, I could have possibly saved that baby's life.
These ultrasounds are particularly vital in regions where access to healthcare is scarce and cultural beliefs discourage prenatal hospital visits. Since the program's launch in 2020, it has screened more than 2,500 women across counties like Kajiado, Migori, Homa Bay, and Kisii. The devices, distributed free of charge, help reduce maternal and infant mortality rates by allowing midwives to detect issues such as breech positions, calculating the due date, or other complications well in advance.
Since I started going for scans, I am now happy to know that my unborn twins are healthy and doing well. I've even begun preparing for their arrival by shopping for them. Being more informed about their due date has given me peace of mind, and I feel much more prepared for their birth.
The portable ultrasound service doesn't stop at just providing scans. It also trains midwives to administer these tests. By arming medical workers with both the technology and the know-how, the program ensures that more women receive life-saving interventions. This includes information about the baby's position, the placenta, and other factors that help pregnant women and their healthcare providers decide on the best delivery period, whether natural or cesarean. The impact has been remarkable. These routine ultrasounds have instilled newfound confidence in pregnant women, especially those living in remote areas far from medical facilities. By better tracking their pregnancies, these women feel more prepared for childbirth. Volunteers also play a key role in educating women about the importance of these scans and how early planning can avert complications. The program, when fully staffed, can conduct up to 3 scans a day, expanding its reach and saving more lives.
There are those who believe they are not supposed to know anything until they wait to the last day when the baby comes. And because of that, you get many mothers getting issues because the scan was very important to know if there was any problem earlier so that it can be solved. But because of the cultural beliefs, it hinders.
The introduction of portable ultrasound devices in Kenya is more than just a technological innovation. It's a lifeline for thousands of women and their babies. By detecting complications early and empowering midwives with critical skills, this service is reshaping maternal health care in the country, offering hope for safer pregnancies and healthier births.
And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.